recruitment, retention, and personnel support, and then Office of Wellness and Wellbeing. As you get ready to respond to each question, ask your question, please make sure you state what category it is coming from. We're going to start to my right with Mr. Brignac and then come all the way around. And then after each one of us have asked the question, we'll start over with Mr. Brignac if you choose to. You can ask up to two. You don't have to ask two, but you can ask up to two. We like to ask at least one question from each category. So again, state the category you're asking your question from when it's your turn to ask. I'm going to ask the last question before we go back to Mr. Brignac to start over. All right? Each candidate will get 3 minutes to make an opening statement. We'll go through the round of questions, and then each candidate will get 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Is everybody with me? All right. We're going to take the first candidate, T. Ballard. T. Ballard. You put it right there. We both can see it. Mr. Ballard, how are you this afternoon? Just to give you a rundown of how the process is going to work. Each one of us is going to ask you one question from a list of categories that we've identified. We can ask up to 2 questions. Each one of us will definitely ask one. If we feel the need to ask 2, we'll do that again. You'll have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. We're going to ask a round of questions, and then you'll have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. All right, and then after that, if there are any comments from the public, we're going to allow them to come up and make any comments. If they make a comment directly germane to anything you said or stated, and you want to come back, we'll give you 2 minutes to come back and rebut anything or respond to anything anyone has said. All right, so with that being stated, as each committee member asks a question, they're going to tell you which category it comes from. All right, and we're going to start with Mr. Brignac.
Oh, I thought he was giving an opening statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. Opening statement, 3 minutes. Press that green button at the bottom of the mic right there. All right, start the time over. Let's start this time over.
Can y'all hear me better?
Yeah,
all right.
Loud and clear.
I might pace. So, good afternoon. My name's Brian Ballard. I'm a lieutenant with the Baton Rouge Police Department. I currently serve as the commander of the Homicide Division. I've been in the Homicide Division for about 16 years. Before that, I was in uniform patrol at Plank Road. 1st District is when I got assigned pretty much right out of the academy after a little training and around the LSU area. I'm a graduate of Scotlandville Magnet High School, then went to LSU. During LSU, I started as a reserve for the sheriff's office. That's kind of where I kind of developed my passion for law enforcement. Once I graduated from LSU, I came to the Baton Rouge Police Training Academy, went through the academy, and then got assigned. It's really been my pleasure to work here. I've got lifelong friends that work for the police department. It's provided for my family, it's provided for me in the last 23, 24 years of me working here. And I just think that some of the things that I've been able to learn while in the Homicide Division, which was just interacting with folks and communicating with people from all walks of life, was something that I really enjoyed about being in homicide and as a police officer in general. So other than that, I would just like to start taking any questions, and I appreciate that y'all let me come and speak with you today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ballard. Mr. Brignac.
Thank you, Councilman. Now, Mr. Ballard, I saw on your resume that you have critical incident and stress management, which relates, at least how it seems, to Category 10, which is Officer Wellness and Wellbeing. And I thought I'd start out by asking you this because I have family in law enforcement, and I know that the emotional weight can be a lot and that it can affect personal life outside and also professional activities. So the question is, how will you address the mental health challenges that officers may face and ensure their holistic well-being, particularly after distressing incidents?
That's a hard question. A lot of times after seriously stressful incidences, I know what we normally do or what we've been doing recently is putting people on admin leave. I think that's good to let an officer decompress. I think that you also can, I worked with that critical stress, that's with the peer support team. I think that we have a nice little group of folks that we can keep up on each other. That's the main thing. I think a lot of times when people get put on admin leave, sometimes they have some questions and stuff like that. I think that we need to do a better job of actually reaching out to them, letting them know the processes. And part of our critical stress team that we did, like we've done some debriefs with other agencies, and that was, they'd seen things that disturbed them, and we were able to almost have like a small setting where you can debrief something. We can kind of just talk about it. No rank, no, just cops talking to other cops about stuff that they had seen, and just keeping an open dialogue, which is, I mean, pretty much keeping an open dialogue is the secret to all of this.
Thank you, Ms. Victoria. And just for the record, you have 2 minutes to answer each question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, and I totally agree with that. Open dialogue is definitely key. I'm coming from the category of standards and strategies. What do you feel is the most important pillar of 21st century policing for our agency, and why?
Without a doubt, community policing. And that, again, goes with the open dialogue. I do a lot of the community walks. I get a lot of information in homicide. We'll just go out to certain areas and just talk to folks. You might not get anything that day, but just when citizens and police officers can talk, just put aside all the formalities and we can just have a conversation, I think you can get a lot of stuff done. I think that, I mean, we have policies and procedures and everything, but just talk to another person like they're another person. I mean, you don't know where they come from in life. You don't know, they don't know where you've come, the things you've seen. I think that community policing is by far the most important.
Thank you.
Mr. McClanahan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ballard. My question is coming to you from Personal Approach and Leadership. What does the first 100 days look like? Rank the top 5 priorities and your process for accomplishing them.
First 100 days, definitely I'm going to take at least 30, if not a little bit more, to sit back and kind of see what the processes are now. I know I'm kind of well familiar with my little short area of the police department. I need to kind of brush up on the bigger, the unit as a whole. I think that one of my main things within the first 100 days would be I want to meet with a lot of the officers and roll calls and check morale. I know that that's always a question when you have a change in leadership, and I think that the morale of the uniform guys is going to trickle down to them being better police officers and being able to interact with the citizens a lot better.
Ms. Carwall.
Good evening. Mine is going to come from external accountability. The mayor has committed to police reform, and complaints and concerns from the community need to be heard. The creation of a civilian oversight agency would help the police and the community relate, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on interacting with some form of civilian oversight.
I would have to know what that looks like. I'd have to kind of see. I'm more of a, I would say, pragmatic person. I want to be on the ground doing things myself, seeing the processes. I think that police reform, the main thing when just kind of looking at a lot of this stuff that we deal with today, I think the main thing in police reform is accountability. We're accountable to the citizens of this city, but we're also accountable to the officers to give them a fair shot in any type of situation where you may have something to where it is an officer versus there may be some type of interaction that didn't go so well between the citizens and the police. I think that also reform is a continuing process. We need to always try to do better and shortening or limiting these imperfections within our police department. And if we can continue to do that, again, I sound like a broken record with dialogue, but I'm a people person. I like talking to folks. I like interacting with folks. And I think I want to say oversight, things like that. I like town hall meetings. I think I would go to a lot of community meetings. That is something that I enjoy. I like meeting the community that way.
All right, thank you.
Pastor Gibson.
Good evening. How do you plan to address potentially discriminatory stops and arrests? And this is from the section on standards and strategies.
If we're making any type of discriminating stops, then that's against policy. We do not, we don't police off of biases, or we police off of probable cause. So if there's anyone stopping anyone of any race, color, creed, that's against policy for the Baton Rouge Police Department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
Mr. Gravels?
I'm going to draw from the leadership, culture, and accountability category. And my question is, what is your background and experience in working with the police union? And do you see avenues for improving relations without compromising accountability? And what has been your experience in that area?
I'm a member of the police union. I know most of the members individually. I will tell you that I don't attend meetings regularly. Every now and then, if someone says something about a police pay raise or something like that, I might attend those type of meetings, but I don't regularly attend union meetings. But I do know that I have a good relationship individually with the members of that union. I think that my relationships with those guys could help in dealing with the union as a whole.
Okay.
Mr. Collins.
How you doing, Mr. Ballard? So my first question is going to come from standard and strategies. Can you share your insights on the broken windows approach and stop and frisk tactics?
Well, I think it goes back to that question that we just had. We base things off of probable cause. I think that, along with community policing, when I was a patrolman, I really enjoyed meeting the people, whether it was the guys that I know are going to be over here doing stuff that we don't want to do, or meeting the two little old ladies that live in a house together because their husbands passed away on Sherwood Street. I think that there is merit to active patrols. I think that we should do proactive patrols as police officers. One of the main things that I talk to when I talk to people in certain areas when we do these walks, they want to know, they want to be seen. They want us to be seen. They're like, I haven't seen you come down my street in 2 weeks. A lot of these places, I think just the mere presence of a uniformed police officer in a marked police car and going out and maybe not so much making a traffic stop, but stopping and talking to somebody. Like a lot of that, again, open dialogue is going to help us. And when you get to know the people in the neighborhood, they're going to tell you what's wrong and they can help you fix it.
And my second question comes from community engagement. I'm sorry.
We'll come back around to you
My bad.
for the second question.
Is it a serpentine like when you're drafting, or do I have to make another loop again?
Ms. Matthews.
Is it working?
Yes.
I hear you.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
can you hear me? Okay. My question is coming from the personal approach and leadership category. This position is a CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization which oversees hundreds of staff and millions of taxpayer dollars and manages thousands of physical resources. What is your background? What in your background makes you qualified to serve at this level? Please provide specific details.
I'm going to try to translate what I've been doing in homicide, which I've just recently, within the last year, took over as the commander, and I understand it as a CEO. You're going to have to trust the talent that you have on the police department, and I know that in speaking with folks that there is a lot of talented people with very specific fields of expertise that are inside the police department. I'm going to have to do one of the things that's hard for me, which is to delegate, but I will surround myself with folks that have the proper background in asset management and things of that nature. Like, I'm pretty much just in charge of a few police cars that if we can keep them on the road, that would be great, but I know that could be considerably more labor intensive once you're looking at a whole fleet.
Mr. Ballard, my chief comes from the role of police. What are the 3 primary or most important roles of a chief of police, particularly in a jurisdiction like the city in Baton Rouge?
I think that the police chief needs to be, for the chief or just police in general?
For the chief of police.
I
Three
think
most important aspects of the job for the chief of police.
we are to lead by example. You're going to have to be, you're the person, you're the face of the department a lot of times, except for Gino, who's a lot better looking. I would say that leadership and also, again, I touched on it before, accountability. People expect you to do what you promised. People expect and deserve that you take over and complete your objectives, whatever it has been. So I think that leadership, and honestly, you need to be a cheerleader. We need to be a champion for some of these officers. There are a lot of things that we do as police officers that go unsung, and I can tell you, with either mentoring young kids, being the coaches, outreach, and taking care of folks in the neighborhood, I think there's a lot of things that we do that we don't get credit for, that if the public were to see that, they would understand more of what we're trying to do, which is just have a better relationship with the community and the people we serve.
Mr. Brignac.
Again, Mr. Ballard. This comes from Category 1, Personal Approach and Leadership. And considering your emphasis on kind of taking into account the needs of the community and also the officers themselves, a question that may be kind of difficult to answer, but the best you can is, what will you do to ensure that all of the police department stakeholders, officers, the community, the police union, political actors, whoever it might be, have faith in and understand the justification for the decisions you make as chief of police?
Honest dialogue. We're not going to sit here and push something down the road. If it's something that I can't discuss at this specific moment, I will tell you, hey, look, that this is something that I can't discuss right now, but we will visit this another time. We do a lot of that in homicide. We have active cases, and we have to tell people a lot of times that we can't tell them everything, but we're going to tell them enough. I want people to know that we are working towards that with everyone. It's just sometimes we can't discuss everything, but open and honest dialogue. Open and honest. I mean, I can't stress it enough. I mean, I don't think that there's a single problem that we have in this city that we can't fix by sitting down and having a cup of coffee and talking about it. I honestly don't. I work with people from all walks of life, and I mean, everybody can find a common ground somewhere.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Victorian.
Thank you so much. What would be this is coming from the personal approach and leadership, what would be your legacy when you retire?
I think my legacy would be the citizens of this city understanding the things that we do, and that they are, for the most part, pleased by the job that we do, and that the officers have a good mental state and can do their 30 years and leave here not feeling like it was a burden. I still enjoy coming to work every day. I think it is a victory when people start retiring and they're like, man, it went out like this. I think that as long as the citizens are mostly happy with what we're doing and our officers are happy, that's a win. Everything else can fall by the wayside.
Thank you.
Mr. McClanahan.
Officer Ballard, I know you touched on you're a member of the police union and what have you. Baton Rouge has 2 police unions, if I'm not mistaken. And do you support having 2 law enforcement unions representing the members of the Baton Rouge Police Department?
Yeah, well, I'm friends with people on both sides, both parties that are involved in Baton Rouge. I work in violent crimes unit. There's a handful of us. Some of us are in both. Some of us are in just 1 or 2. But again, that's not an issue. We've always worked together. It's not a big deal.
Ms. Carwell.
My second question is coming from Category 3, Staffing, Budgeting, and Equipment. What strategies will you use to determine and fulfill staffing needs? I know in the past we have had some budget issues were dealt with through, efficiency. That may mean we have enough people, we don't have enough people, whatever. How will you determine our needs and get those fulfilled?
I think that when you can determine the needs by what services are we providing, are we having to hold calls for several, way too long. But honestly, a lot of this, I would say recruiting, we're down 100 plus officers. I think our best tool as police officers is the police officers themselves. If you can walk around and talk to folks, if you can walk around and show the benefits and the advantages of coming to work for the police department, we can sell ourselves. I mean, you're always going to want to use social media and all the newer things that folks do today. I'm an old fogey. I just got on Instagram. I just post pictures of my dogs. But I really think that we are our own best resource to draw more candidates here, because if you can have somebody that when you bump into them at the grocery store and they talk about how much that they'll enjoy working for the police department, that says volumes.
Pastor Gibson?
From personal approach and leadership, in your opinion, what is the most important criteria needed in the new chief of police?
To be an effective communicator. I mean, it's one thing, I think, to sit here in front of y'all. This is kind of, I guess, this is comfortable for me. I'm used to sitting in grand juries, but I think a lot of the interpersonal communication skills we're lacking these days because people are stuck in their cell phones. I think that just to come up and to be a good communicator and to explain the processes that we have to do and why it's happening this way. I think if you explain things to most folks, they understand it, but we're going to have to be able to get out there with various tools and explain the reason that we do what we do.
Mr. Gravel?
Yes, Officer Ballard, this is from staffing, budgeting, and equipment. How would you assess the coordination and cooperation between the Baton Rouge Police Department and other law enforcement agencies, such as the sheriff and also federal agencies? And can those relations be improved to police more effectively?
Absolutely. I mean, I work in the violent crime unit. We're housed at state police. I interact every day with members of the state police, federal agencies, the sheriff's office. We kind of can pass information along. That was why it was created in 2011. We came together to share ideas. Sometimes our bad guys or bad girls, they don't overlap, but sometimes they do. But we're sitting there. We see each other every day. I pass the guys at the sheriff's office while we're drinking coffee and discuss the cases that they are working, the cases that we work. I think we have a really good working relationship. I know in the violent crimes unit, and I can't see any reason why that wouldn't bleed out to some of the other larger departments as a whole. I mean, I've never had any issues working with any of the rest of the police departments and sheriffs and state around here, so I don't see that being an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Lieutenant Ballard, are you going to update and release a current Brady list? If not, why? If so, why?
I think did we release it the last time? I think that was the DA's office that actually released the Brady list. If there's anyone, and believe me, this is important to me because I don't want any person to have to testify in one of my cases that could have their testimony thrown out. So if there's anyone excluded from testifying or put on a Brady list, their characters in question, that might be that's going to be an issue.
So would you release it or not?
I would.
Ms. Matthews?
This question comes from recruitment, retention, and personnel support. What can be done in Baton Rouge to recruit more qualified officers, and how would you implement your plan? What has been your experience in this area?
Again, I don't work in recruiting, but I do know some of the folks that do work in there. They are doing an outstanding job right now with trying to recruit new officers. Unfortunately, across nationwide, recruiting is an issue. Recruiting is an issue with multiple agencies around here. Again, I'll go back to what I was saying before. I think we're our best tool to do that. I think that you can come in here. I can sell Baton Rouge Police Department to somebody who wants to be a police officer in any avenue he or she wishes to pursue. We can do that here. We can, if you're interested in investigations, if you're interested in crime scene, I think that we unfortunately have enough business in Baton Rouge to where whatever your niche or you believe your niche to be with the police department, we can accommodate that. So I know a lot of folks that want to come here and they have very specific things that they want to do. And I think that that's a draw. I think that people watch CSI. I want to be a CSI person. Well, come on in. We can teach you how to do that. We do a whole lot. We're very broad with what we can do and the different divisions that we have.
How do you, and this question comes from community engagement, how do you intend to engage youth across our community to produce positive relationships with our officers?
I think we need to have, we have a truce group now, but I think that we need to have more officers visiting the schools. I think that they need to see us as a benefit than the scary police officer that comes and I think that every police interaction doesn't have to be someone was in trouble. I grew up in Baker, Louisiana. All of my ball coaches were all police officers. If I saw a police officer, I'd want to come and talk to him. We tried to harbor that and tried to foster that kind of same thing when I was in patrol. We'd go and talk to the neighborhood kids, but a lot of times I think that step out and talk to a young person. Like, they need to know that we're not. The worst thing that I hate to see as a police officer is you're walking through a grocery store and they're like, "There's the police. If you act up, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna tell them to get you." I'll stop people and I say, "Don't tell somebody that." I said, "You need to be able to come to me if you're lost and you can't find your mom and dad in the store. You need to be able to come to a police officer." And I think that if we can, kind of broaden that a little bit, kids should be able to come to us. I know that they're going through a lot with social media and the violence that has plagued not only this city but across the nation, and they need to be able to know that they can come to us for protection.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. You now have 2 minutes to make closing remarks.
I would say that I did, in preparing for this today, that I looked up the mission statement for the Baton Rouge Police, and of all of this book, it's about one sentence, and it is to serve with the Baton Rouge community to prevent crime and to promote safety and well-being for all. We go through all of this we can really boil it down to this one sentence. I've dedicated my career to fighting violent crime. I think that we need to be promoting safety for all. There's not a single child that doesn't deserve to go play ball in his front yard and have to worry about any violent crime that happened in this city. And I have pretty much tried during my career to take my little piece out of it. I think that a lot of times we can confuse things with these big sweeping changes. And my dad told me when I was a lot younger than I am now, that you can build your life on the simple principles. I think that if you can do that, the simple things in life, if you can build off of those things, then that will help in the long run. I think that we have a bunch of good men and women with this police department. I've seen it every day. I saw it this weekend when they surrounded the officers that were involved in the traffic crash. I know we have good men and women with good hearts on this department, and if they can just kind of show that to everybody else, then that would speak for itself. I think that I could be the one to lead these men and women only because I have relationships with them. I'm not afraid. I have thick skin. I've had to walk into these places in the past and tell folks the worst news that they're ever going to hear in their entire life. So if I can go and walk into these families and tell them that their loved one is not coming back, I don't think that back talking from other folks around the city is going to ruin what I got to do. I would just want to put this city first, put these officers that I know that they're doing a great job. And that's it.
Mr. Ballard, thank you so much for interviewing with this committee to be the next chief of police. We sincerely appreciate you, and this concludes the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, just a reminder, make sure you announce at the beginning of your question which category it's coming from. We ready for the next candidate? Y'all ready? All right.
Yes.
She won't take you in the back. Ladies and gentlemen, our next candidate is going to be M. Daniels. M. Daniels. 3 minutes for opening, 2 minutes for closing. 2 minutes for each question. I want to thank all the people in the general public for coming out and being with us this evening. We're going to have a public comment session at the end of the interviews, just so you all are aware. Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Lamont Cole. I'm the chair of the Police Chief Interview Committee. I'd like to explain to you how the interview is going to work. Each one of the committee members is going to ask you a question from a list of categories that we have already identified. You will be given 2 minutes to answer each question. Prior to answering the questions, you will be given 3 minutes to make an opening statement. And then after you answer all questions, you'll be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Each committee member can ask up to 2 questions. Up to 2. We'll all ask 1, but we can't ask 2. All right, we'll start on to my immediate right, your left, with Mr. Bricknett, work our way around for the first round of questions. Then we'll come back and go around again. Yeah. I'm just telling him how that's going to work.
Yes.
All right, is the committee ready? You got 3 minutes for your opening statement, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you. And again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, and to all those who are in attendance. My name is Myron Daniels, and I am the current Chief of Staff for the Baton Rouge Police Department. I have served this great city for over 25 years, and I'm now vying to continue my service to this community as your Chief of Police. I am a proven transformative leader that within the last 5.5 years, I've had the pleasure of serving at the executive level of administration. During that time, I have helped implement 21st century policing within the Baton Rouge Police Department and to move the culture toward accountability and increased professionalism. One of my priorities has always been to remain building and improving trust within our community, within the Baton Rouge area. I recognize that we live in an ever-changing society. And as leaders, I have had to change a little bit myself. That has required me to re-envision aspects of this profession. And that includes recruitment and retention, the culture of the agency, training, and again, accountability. Before we get started with questions, I do want to confirm that I did voluntarily authorize the Mayor's Advisory Committee to review my personnel files, internal affairs investigation files, and disciplinary action. I also understand and have no issues discussing any of those matters in this public forum. I've learned over the years that as a department leader, you have to be able and willing to answer tough questions. It comes with the position, and whether ironically or symbolically, this particular chamber is a place where that often occurs. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to be before you, and I am willing to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Brignac.
Evening, Mr. Daniels.
Good evening.
Now, this is from category 11, possible questions for current BRPD candidates. And so I see in your resume that you were the internal affairs commander from 2018 to 2020. And given that role and the number of incidents that seemed to appear during that time, how did you or your division respond to the difficulties and scandals related to other divisions in recent years? For example, the street crimes unit, the narcotics division, the canine unit. Did you adopt, suggest, or implement any new policies, and what's been their result?
Okay, great question. So yes, you're absolutely right. In 2018 of March, I became the internal affairs commander through appointment by Chief Paul. During that time, I had the opportunity to deal with quite a few of the incidents that you just described. One of the things I am happiest about during that time was we put accountability measures in place, and we were able to decrease the number of internal affairs complaints that we had to investigate. We actually saw a decrease in those complaints against officers. The even better part is we provided a way for more complaints to come in. We made it easier to file complaints. We created the online process of being able to file a complaint against police officers rather than just come in and provide a statement to a supervisor. We also, during that time, one of the big controversies was the use of K9. It was actually one of my tasks to visit that policy. I communicated with the then commander of that division. We reviewed policy from agencies of similar size, and we came up with some recommendations. Those recommendations included the mandatory wearing of body cameras during those incidents, or activation of those body cameras during those incidents. And again, that policy, very significant, decreased the use of our K9 deployments exponentially.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My question will be coming from recruitment, retention, and personnel support. The Baton Rouge Police Department has been in the news as of late. These news stories have certainly had an impact on the officers' morale. With internal investigations, external investigations, and lawsuits pending involving officer misconduct, how would you raise morale in the department among your officers?
Well, thank you for that question, Ms. Victoria. Fortunately, I'm already able to actually do some of those things. Yes, we have been in the news recently. There have been a lot of questions regarding actions taken by a few officers within our department. The positive side of that is the department was able to hold officers accountable for their wrongdoing. With that, yes, it caused an issue or a concern regarding morale on the police department. A lot of the people who were involved in some of these allegations were very respected officers within our agency. And so what we did was we went down to actually speak with all our officers face to face. Oftentimes there are so many questions that arise, but the people who can answer those questions aren't often in the room. And if they are not answered, then there's holes in a story. And what we found is if there are, I guess you can say, spaces, they're usually filled in, and they're filled in with negativity. So we actually go out and went out and spent time with all our officers, giving them the opportunity to have an open dialogue with us and to answer any questions that they may have. And with that, just showing that, again, we are open. We do not hide anything that we do. And as we are transparent with the public, we're also transparent with the officers that work within our department.
Thank you.
Myron, how you doing today, brother?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
What are the three primary or the three most important roles of a chief of police, particularly in a jurisdiction or a city like Baton Rouge?
I will start off by saying a chief of police must possess certain qualities, and that's within any location or assignment that they take on. One of those, or the first, I would say they have to be a true leader. Besides being a leader, they have to be a coordinator and a director. Those three things are required to ensure communication, to ensure the management of the police department. But if I had to add a fourth, I would say unifying. You have to be able to unify and bring people together. You have to be able to allow yourself and your officers to be able to express and to be able to pull in the community, because that's who we serve. So you have to be a unifier, and that's both internally and externally, within and without and outside of the police department.
Ms. Caldwell.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
I would like to, keeps turning off. Sorry about that. My question comes from Category 7, External Accountability. The mayor has committed to police reform, and something that my group, Together Baton Rouge, is finds very important is the concept of using civilian oversight. So what are your thoughts, and how might you utilize a civilian oversight type agency if you are our next chief?
Yes, ma'am. A civilian oversight, topic that's been around law enforcement for quite a while. Been quite a bit of discussion on it. I am happy to say I was able to research it myself, particularly with some of my counterparts with the New Orleans Police Department. We've had many conversations to discuss their policies, how it actually works, and the pros and cons of it. With that, I can say that I have no problem with oversight of any manner. We've somewhat enacted that same concept within the Baton Rouge Police Department. We have what's called the Chief Advisory Committee. That committee is brought in, and that committee is allowed to hear the actions within the police department, along with potential policy changes and things of that nature, and to make comments. Matter of fact, several of the comments and suggestions brought by that committee actually led to policy change. So I have no issues with it. I grew up with a mother who emphasized that if you're doing the right thing, it doesn't matter who's looking at it. You're welcome.
Pastor Gibson.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
What skills or abilities you have gained from your current or previous assignments that allow you to stand out among the other candidates? Second part of the question is, in other words, what do you bring to the table because of that prior experience?
Great question, Reverend Gibson. I will say probably the greatest thing is I've done it. I'm doing it right now. I have, for the last actually 5.5 years, as I stated, been in an administrative role on the executive level. The last 3 years, I've been the second in command within the Baton Rouge Police Department. That means that in the chief's absence, I am the appointing authority. And I can tell you the growth that I've had over the 5+ years has been tremendous. I am responsible for our budget. I have had the pleasure of being the person who oversaw the implementation of the efficiency study that was done. I've had the pleasure of finding those savings within the police department where we could recognize raises for our police officers. So, in short, sir, I'm doing the job, I've done the job, and I'm ready to move forward and continuing to do the job. Thank you, sir.
Reverend DeGraven?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Daniels, this is from Standards and Strategies. Domestic violence has been an increasing problem in our community. And as police chief, what initiatives or ideas would you bring to deal with that?
Yes, sir. Domestic violence has been something that I have actually, I'm actually considered a subject matter expert in. I have testified in cases within parishes surrounding here. I've instructed on that topic for in excess of 10 years as a contractor for the Attorney General's office. And with that, I have a passion to try my best to eradicate it. And with one of the things that we're doing right now, we have assigned personnel to intentionally address those concerns. One with the DA's office, another, we have a victims assistance coordinator who assists victims of domestic violence. But one of the newest initiatives, and will be before the council for introduction on it very soon, it actually may be Wednesday, has to do with electronic monitoring. To be able to assist even after we make the arrest on keeping those victims safe and holding those perpetrators accountable. That electronic monitoring program will operate through the 19th JDC. And again, that's one of the programs that the Baton Rouge Police Department has committed to funding for that entity.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
All right, how you doing, Mr. Daniels?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
All right. So my question comes from the section role of police. What are your views on the presence of law enforcement within educational institutions?
Okay, Mr. Collins, I thank you for that question. And I will tell you that it depends on the manner in which law enforcement is there. In general, I truly support law enforcement being in the school systems as resource officers. We're seeing great success from that. The Baton Rouge Police Department has piloted that program at McKinley High School over the last several years. We're seeing quite a bit of success from it. The officers embedded in those schools, to include the Struma High School and others that have officers who work those areas, we've seen great things stopped or bad things stopped prior to. It humanizes those officers. Those officers develop relationships with those kids and relationships with those staff, and it only helps. And the other part of it is, I think for the community, I think they find it just another level of safety for their children while they're there, knowing that there is actually a police officer on site if something does happen.
Ms. Matthews?
All right. Hi, Mr. Daniels.
Yes, ma'am.
Without discussing any details regarding the Brave Cave and related accusations, what steps would you take to ensure that there is a cultural, if there is a cultural issue with the police department, that this type of alleged activity would not occur again?
Okay. And I preface the fact that I do have to be very mindful of the things that I say regarding that topic. One, there is a lawsuit filed relative to it or a few lawsuits filed relative to it. The other part is there are administrative matters associated with some of the allegations from that facility that I will have to hear and make decisions on. So, but I will answer your question to the best of my abilities. I think you've seen our intentional efforts within this administration. I think you've seen the fact that we've taken the steps to investigate it, not just criminally or not just administratively, but criminally as well. And with that, we also chose to have a third-party review of it and involve the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So at the conclusion of it, just as we did with our narcotics unit, there will be a full audit done on procedures to ensure that there are no systematic issues that are going on. And again, we'll take the corrective steps at that point in time. Right now, we've already taken corrective steps, having reassigned those personnel and also ensuring that that facility is not used. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes, sir.
this is a multicultural community with thriving refugee and immigrant population. Please detail what, if any, experience you have effectively providing public safety programs in place for partnering with these communities.
Well, I can tell you I'm a people person. I think I speak to everybody I pass, and I smile at everybody I pass. Through those efforts, because I realize that you have to be approached, you have to be friendly. And with that, over the years, I do respect the fact that we need diversity throughout. We talked about some of the recruitment efforts, and those were some of the efforts that we were intentional on pushing forward to ensure that we could find recruits and police officers from the different demographics. With that, we've also created liaison positions within all of those communities. And it doesn't matter whether it's Latin community, the LGBTQ community, or the Jewish community, the Black community, you name it, we have a liaison within those organizations. I support diversity wholeheartedly and doing everything that we can to bring everyone within. The reason I do that is because I think diversity brings not only diversity of race and gender and all those other things, but it also brings diversity of thought. And that diversity of thought is what provides us with more knowledge, strengthens us as people, and helps us to understand each other and better be able to communicate and interact and live with each other.
Mr. Brignac.
Okay, Mr. Daniels. So, taking in mind what you said about the Brave Cave and ongoing discussions, in Category 7, external accountability, it states, how will you instill trust with the public regarding the most recent abuse by officers in the Baton Rouge Police Department, particularly considering that, at least in some experience, it appears that like there might have been some overlap per se with narcotics. How can you instill trust in the community, seeing as there are certainly always going to be divisions working together in some way and crossover? Yeah,
so the key word that I heard you say is trust. And I can tell you that trust is not a one-time interaction. It is a constant, fluid process to build and strengthen that trust within our communities. I think that what you saw is over the many years as we've implemented procedural justice training within our police department, that those officers are taking every contact that they have with the public as an opportunity to improve and build on that trust, to break down those barriers that history has erected for many, many years. So with that, I think that the public understands that accountability is a must, They've watched and witnessed the Baton Rouge Police Department and its staff from an executive level on hold those who are perpetrators of police misconduct accountable. And as the chief stood here probably a few weeks ago and mentioned all of the arrests and terminations and things along those lines. So I think as long as we're doing the right thing, that we won't have a problem fostering that trust among the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Victorian.
Thank you so much. Mr. Daniels, I'm coming from the category of personal approach and leadership. As we embark on this new season, please share any thoughts you have about the overall direction and outlook for the Baton Rouge Police Department.
Just to give you a little bit idea about my leadership style, I'm a positive leader. I believe that we have to approach everything as positively as we can. As we move forward, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question.
Sure,
I
absolutely.
want to make sure I got the second part right.
As we embark on this new season, please share any thoughts you have about the overall direction and outlook for the Baton Rouge Police Department.
So that overall direction and outlook, as I said, is being a positive leader. I see the wins. I see how we have broken down those barriers within this community. Crime reduction is something that many would talk about throughout and continue to talk about. But I can tell you, I've seen those efforts. I've seen what a difference a police department that cares about the community and has a standard and a direction to go in, how they will move. I am very confident in the direction that the police department is moving in. There's a lot of reform that's taking place and has taken place, and that is not easy. But nevertheless, we are moving in a positive direction. We're seeing the fruits of our labor, as we can know just by the violent crime numbers. We're seeing the reduction of 46+% of homicides. We're seeing about the same number, actually a little higher, of non-fatal shootings reduced from 2022 to present. Our police department cares. They are continuously out there working hard for the community, and I don't think that is going to change anytime soon.
Mr. McClanahan.
Excuse me. How would you address recruiting? This comes from recruitment, retention, and personnel support. How will you address recruiting, retention concerns without sacrificing quality of the officers you hire?
Okay. Ironically, recruitment and retention has been something that has been kind of near and dear to me. I spent many years down at the training academy as an instructor and worked firsthand with recruiting for many years. Actually, my project in graduate school, my research project was based on recruitment, mainly to get rid of that consent decree and how we can better ourselves. I can tell you that I believe that it's not about the quantity, it's all about the quality. If we recruit or lower our standards, which I don't believe in, we'll end up, in my opinion, paying for it dearly on the back end. So I'd rather have the quality, and we have a recruiter now who's he's moving outside of the box. His methods are different. We have to be able to rethink and re-envision how things should be done, and he's making a difference. And we are getting some very quality applicants. We're seeing applicants come in from out of state now, wishing to join the police department. And when we talk about the retention portion of it, matter of fact, today, an officer who once worked for us, who moved to Houston, started back with us, a very decorated, exemplary officer. And it's Baton Rouge Police Department drew him back. So I think recruitment and retention is definitely moving in the right direction.
Ms. Carwall.
There we go. My question is coming from personal approach. You have a lot of stakeholders that are looking at BRPD. That includes officers, that includes the community, it includes the unions, politicians. And they have to understand and have faith in the justification for your decisions. So how will you deal with that if you're the chief? Having to juggle all the different people that you have to keep happy or answer to, however you want to look at that.
Yes, and the community as a whole has to be added to that number as well. Yes, I have no issues with being open and transparent. I think that is a huge part of the lines of communication when we can be spoken to or asked about our decisions and have no issues shedding light on why we made the decisions we made and our rationale behind those. But I will say, I don't think it's that challenging. I think if you're operating under the principle of ethics and you're providing truth, regardless of what it is, I am, and I'll openly say it, I don't believe in telling the story to two different people and it being different. I'm not going to always make everybody happy, but I will be honest with you. And I think that goes a long way. I think that just as some of the stakeholders may not have liked some of the decisions we've made, and they've openly voiced them, and we welcome it. But they trust that we are doing what we can.
Pastor Gibson.
Can you share your insights on the broken windows approach and stop and frisk tactics?
The broken window approach. It's a theory that's been around for quite some time, as well as stop and frisk. But I will say the broken window approach, we're doing a lot of things right now, and I support it wholeheartedly. That place network investigations and that process of including everyone within the process of solving problems within the community. I do believe that we've seen the efforts. A lot of those come from safe, hopeful, healthy BR. You see how we work together from blight to the actual enforcement of law. So I truly understand and appreciate and see the value in that. Stop and frisk made very popular or controversial by New York City. I will tell you, I think it's been taken out of context on so many occasions. There are two words, stop and frisk. Just because a person stopped does not mean that the law allows for that person to be frisked or searched. There are a lot of laws that protect it, particularly those under constitutionally the Fourth Amendment. The case law that's famous or goes along with that is Terry versus Ohio. And with it, again, I think that once you meet that first burden, the only time that a frisk should occur, the rules are very specific. It includes what areas are and not to be invaded, such as the outer clothing must be patted down. And it is not to look for evidence, it is only to detect potential dangers. And that has to be articulated before that could ever happen. And if the stop isn't right, the frisk isn't right.
Mr. Daniels, what is your, this is from Leadership, Culture, and Accountability. What is your approach to working with the police union? Do you see some avenues for improving relations without compromising accountability? And would you talk about your experience in this area?
I will. I have been a member of all three organizations within the Baton Rouge Police Department. That is the Magnolia State Peace Officers Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 1, and the Local 237 Union of Police for the Baton Rouge Police Department. I have no problem working with anyone, but I do not believe that compromising accountability is even something that we can even entertain. We have to do what's right. And I understand and I respect the union's duties as far as representing their membership. But right is right. And it doesn't matter whether you're a union member or you have elected not to enroll in any of the three. But we have to work together. We have to work together. Again, like I said, we've had some confrontational relationships in the past. We have seen that they have gotten better, but we still have a long way to go. And we can't give up. We have to continue to try to move those relationships forward because they are a part of the police department, and they also have they're there for collective bargaining as well with the city.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Point of privilege, I'd be not right if I didn't recognize the fact that the greatest sorority known to man and woman has entered the room, and that's the lovely ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out in broad blue and put it right behind you, Mr. Daniels. All right, Mr. Daniels, I appreciate your willingness to discuss your IA file here on the floor. But my next question is, from standards and strategies, please discuss with us ideas you have for violence reduction in our community.
Okay. Violence reduction in our community. I talked about, and this is not my first time appearing before this committee. Some of the faces have changed, but I've been here before. And then I presented a strategy. I believe that simplicity is the greatest of the approaches that we should take. We have to learn to realize that we can't solve this problem by ourselves. It is a community issue, and therefore the community has to be a part of the solution. And we've done that. Moving forward, I see community outreach as important. I see that and believe wholeheartedly that we have to be able to prevent it or intervene before we have to go into the enforcement portion of it. I talked back then, and I still agree with the fact of, I think data-driven policing methods is important. Technology is definitely needed. We've figured out that they are true force multipliers in this process. And there's a concept out there that we have to, again, I talked about the monitoring system and things to assist even after the arrest. I still believe in the rehabilitation process. I think that it can work, and when we have the community involved in it, those interrupters who go out and do the work and who can help prevent, it only strengthens the police department. So my approach is very simple. It takes the community for a resolution.
My question comes from personal approach and leadership. What does the first 100 days look like? Rank the top 5 priorities in your process for accomplishing them.
Okay. My first 100 days will be a little different. The transition is a little easier because of what I do already. But I would say my top 5 priorities. The first priority is, I mentioned it before, strengthening those community relations and trust. I believe in that wholeheartedly. My second priority is the reduction of crime. My third priority would be the morale of our police department. I've always said that we have to do everything that we can to have a willing, caring police officer, a whole police officer there. The fourth would be the recruitment and retention that I talked about, being able to provide even more service to the community and those within the police department. And then the fifth is one that I think people don't put enough emphasis on, and that's officer wellness. We ask officers to do a lot. They see a lot. They suffer from the same trauma, but the difference is they do it on a daily basis. And so we have to make sure our officers are healthy, and that's both physically and mentally. And so officer wellness would be my fifth.
Last but certainly not least, how do you plan to improve relations between the Baton Rouge Police Department and the Black community?
My plan has always been, you have to be there. You have to be within the community. You can't solve it from 9,000 airlines sitting in an office on the 3rd floor. You have to be out there in the community where people are comfortable enough to be able to talk with you, to touch you, to understand that you are there and you actually care. I'm a product of this city, born and raised in North Baton Rouge. And I can tell you, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you do, I still believe that this community is strong. And this community is very strong. And you can bridge those gaps, but it takes a personal, intentional, and as a friend of mine says, an intimate impact. It has to be direct in most cases, meaning I have to intentionally do what I can to bridge that gap with you, not put a policy in place and indirectly it moves. But when you have buy-in from those within the police department of community policing and the community who believes and trusts and they see the service that you're providing and it is acceptable to them, that time spent on non-enforcement pieces is priceless.
Mr. Daniels, you now have 2 minutes to make a closing statement.
Thank you. And again, it's an honor to have this opportunity, and I thank all of you in attendance, and that includes those who are here present as well as who may be monitoring online. I appreciate the fact that people take time and they're interested in who their next chief of police is. As I was here before the committee 6 years ago, to date, you'll see consistency in me and my philosophies. Some of those philosophies and ideas then are things that have been accomplished, and we are now taunting as successes within our agency. For that, I can honestly say I am very proud to have played a part in it. And again, that goes from my recruiting strategy to ending the consent decree to community outreach to that data-driven policing. But one thing I would say as I conclude, I stand before you with firsthand experience and knowledge of the challenges and expectations of this position. I am ready to meet those challenges and whatever evil head on, and to keep Baton Rouge safe and to lead this great police department. I will say, some may think it's rather bold that I say that I am ready to meet those evils head on, but this is just an example of my sacrifice and dedication to this community. Besides, one of my spiritual leaders always says, if you've never met the devil face to face, then you're probably traveling in the same direction. So, well, I've been fighting evil my entire life. I truly believe in my calling, and it is my calling, and I will remain obedient regardless of the evil that come my way. In Romans chapter 12:21.
Last statement.
Yes, sir. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. I am what's good. I am good for this city. I am good for this community. I am good for the Baton Rouge Police Department. And all that combined makes me the best candidate for the chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniels, for interviewing with the Chief of Police Interview Committee. We sincerely appreciate you. At this time,
And sir, if you will allow me, I do have a strategy plan for each one of you to review, and I'll be welcome any questions thereafter after this.
stick around. The general public is going to ask questions at the end of all the interviews. And they may have a question for you or something. You going to pass it out, Ms. Chambers? Okay. All right. Let's take a 5-minute bathroom break. We'll recess for a bathroom break. Ms. Chambers, where the snacks and stuff? Okay.
Just to stand up. What's up in your world?
We're 7 minutes into our 5-minute break, committee members. I got one. No, I got water. What part?
Yeah, I ain't something to do with. What, did you find out? What it is?
Eugene Collins, if you're out there in the
85 beta, whatever.
Eugene out there, Tony?
It might be in the bathroom.
Nigga.
Nobody's out in the hall.
Come on, man. We got 3 more candidates, sir. Sisters down here to see you, man. Come on, man.
Yes.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Our next candidate is going to be S. Douglas. And again, just as a reminder, please state the category your question is coming from. Now, committee members, I do want to say this, because this came up during the break. If your second question comes as a follow-up to a question that has already been asked, that's fine as well.
Okay.
You got that? If your second question comes as a follow-up to a question that's already been asked, and the candidate opens up that response, that's fine as well. Great. But just remember, 2 questions. We don't want to be here till this time tomorrow. Don't put your purse on the floor. Put in that chair right there to your right. Yeah.
We should get points for not putting it on the floor. What's up with that?
We're not gonna let anybody take it. You may. I think we got enough police in here to protect the purse. Good afternoon or good evening, Ms. Douglas. My name is Lamont Cole. I'm the chair of the Police Chief Interview Committee. The way the process is going to work, you'll have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. And then each committee member can ask you up to 2 questions from 12 different categories. We can ask up to 2 questions from 12 different categories. You have 2 minutes to answer each question, and then you can make a 2-minute closing. All right? So we're going to start it off, and you'll have 3 minutes to open up and let us know when you're ready.
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
On you.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to interview for a police chief. I have almost 19 years of law enforcement experience, and I have worked in uniform patrol where I served as a patrol officer as well as a field training officer. I worked in criminal investigations where I served as a violent crimes detective. I worked in recruiting, and my efforts got us from under the consent decree in 2019. I also worked in internal affairs where I thoroughly and impartially investigated police misconduct. I also served in the chief's office as a special project coordinator who worked closely with Chief Paul and under his leadership. And prior to my current position, I served as a full-time academy instructor and supervisor. My current role now is the Director of Training Academy, and I'm responsible for the design, the implementation, the selection, the evaluation, and the maintenance of all records for all training and all trainers of the department. As a result of my varied law enforcement experience, I have strong transferable skills in managing personnel, leading, directing, organizing, coordinating, strategic development, establishing and maintaining partnerships, creating and revising policy, engaging in critical decision-making, budgeting, evaluating training needs, providing training, implementing new initiatives, as well as communicating visions. It has been my honor and privilege to serve the community in various capacities and positions, which demonstrates my ability to lead, to multitask, to focus, to lead, direct, to learn, impact, manage, and control various responsibilities, sometimes all at the same time. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's in business administration, and I am all but dissertation in a doctor of education and organizational leadership, with an emphasis in organizational development. Outside of work, I give back, and I empower the community during my off time as well. I am a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, where I currently serve as the chapter president of Omicron Sigma Zeta. I am passionate about law enforcement, and I stand firm on the mission to serve with the Baton Rouge community, to prevent crime, and to promote the safety and well-being of all, which is all in alignment with the 21st century policing principles. I understand the challenges and the current issues that BRPD is facing, and now more than ever, I want to lead this agency to improve officer morale, officer development, retention, training, improve job satisfaction, to ultimately improve police community relations. I've done the work to prepare for this role, so I'm confident that my varied skills and experience make me a strong fit for this position. Thank you.
Mr. Brignac.
Good evening, Ms. Douglas. So bear with me. This might sound a bit all over the place, but I'll clarify it if you need it.
Yes,
So
sir.
you have quite the extensive resume: investigator, detective, patrol officer, academy. And so would you say that there is any skill, ability, or practice related to your current or former assignments that might be inapplicable to police chief? And by that I mean, is there something about your current role that's technical or practical for that role, but might not translate as well to police chief, or just isn't as necessary, you might say?
Thank you for that question. I believe everything that I've done throughout my career is applicable to serving as a police chief. I strategically and intentionally align myself and put myself out there to gain skills and knowledge, learning how the investigative process works for criminal investigations, learning how to investigate police misconduct, learning how important training is, because when a lawsuit happens or there is police misconduct or some missteps that's made on law enforcement, the first request that comes in is the training records. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Victoria.
Good evening, Ms. Douglas.
Good evening.
You have a rich training background and domestic violence. Domestic violence has been on the rise in our community. As police chief, I'm sorry this topic gets to me, because sometimes I know too many people personally who have to deal with this. As police chief, do you have ideas on initiatives that the department can initiate to help reduce domestic violence?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Victorian. I personally was a victim of domestic violence, so it's near and dear to my heart, which is what led to my desire to go into the violent crimes division when I served in that capacity. As far as initiatives, I do understand, and I've worked in other capacities to where I was able to partner with STAR, the Butterfly Society, as well as the Iris Center, to try to raise awareness in such that many believe that domestic violence is a private thing, but actually it's a community thing in a sense, because we have loved ones, we have family members that may see the signs but think it's no longer their business. And I think some of the initiatives that we can implement, or I would be honored to lead, is to do more domestic violence awareness training sessions, not only just in school settings, but in school settings, community events, as well as domestic violence the awareness is in October. I think it should be a year-round thing because it happens year-round. I understand that efforts are increased, but I still think that there are things we can do in the 11 months of the year, whether it be the educational pieces, partnering with schools, higher learning institutions, religious leaders, and things of that nature to help raise awareness, to kind of get more people involved with combating domestic violence, because the signs are there. You just have to be looking.
Thank you.
Ms. McClanahan.
Good afternoon, Ms. Douglas.
Good afternoon.
This question is coming from possible questions for current BRPD candidates. Throughout your career as an officer at BRPD, were there any policies or procedures that you believe should have been modified or eliminated? And if so, why?
I personally have one that I would like to eliminate altogether. Recently, I sought out an opportunity, and I feel as though the process was not fair. And although it eventually worked out in my favor, moving forward, I actually see that as an opportunity to eliminate that, to take out of the nuances that kind of affect the decision making in that process that would have led to me being disenfranchised as a result. So I do have one particularly from a personal standpoint. However, I could actually see eliminating that problem, that policy could open doors for others behind me to where they won't have to be subjected to that.
Ms. Carwell.
Good evening. I'm with Together Baton Rouge, and one of our issues that we are strongly behind is having civilian oversight incorporated with the police department. So I know Mayor Broom is committed to police reform and making sure complaints and concerns are addressed. If you are our new chief, what are your thoughts on working with civilian oversight or implementing that in your administration?
Very, very good question. In 2017, when I stood before this platform, I said then that I was open to some form of civilian oversight, and I still stand on that today, even more now, considering our current circumstances. I'm very open to it. There's a lot of things that need to be considered of what that looks like in the Baton Rouge community. And there's a lot of details that need to be ironed out because there's a cost that comes with that. So some budgetary restrictions may be an issue, but at least I am welcome to conversing with community groups, political bodies, religious leaders to figure out what that looks like for Baton Rouge and ironing out the details to implement some form of civilian oversight. There is no one size fits all. Some agencies utilize a hybrid model. We just need to see what that would look like for the community here in Baton Rouge.
Pastor Gibson.
Good evening. This position is CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization which oversees hundreds of staff and millions of taxpayer dollars and manage thousands of physical resources. What in your background makes you qualified to serve at this level? And please provide specific details.
Yes, sir. First, I don't know too many people that manage a budget that size, but I can say the closest I got was to overseeing the Collective Healing Initiative, where we spent in excess of $750,000, where we use those funds to pour into the community, into grassroots organizations and community groups like the 100 Black Men of Metro Baton Rouge, the NAACP. We partnered the Butterfly Society. We did so well with doing that. The grant was initially for $750,000. However, we were so committed to the work that we were able to get an increase so that we could finish one last aspect of that programming that we had. But that is the closest that I've had to the $1 million budget. And I think we did a great job. The task that I was given was spend it all. And we spent it all, and then some.
Pastor DeGravel.
Ms. Douglas, thank you. This is from the community engagement category. What are your proposals concerning networking with other sectors of the community, churches, nonprofits, advocacy groups, and so forth, who work to address causes of crime, poor education, job opportunities, addiction, etc.? What has been your experience in this area? Again,
It was a great opportunity for me to work with the Collective Healing Initiative and to oversee that grant. It actually put me in rooms with a lot of folks and a lot of community groups to where one thing that I took away from that, it actually enhanced my mindset and on how to approach and to see things from different perspectives. So I definitely appreciated doing that. Moving forward, I would like to continue those relationships and those partnerships that I was afforded the opportunity to establish back then, so that, because when you think about it, there's hundreds of churches in the Baton Rouge community. Some of them are in some disinvested communities or whatnot. So I believe that, and I think when I worked in a recruiting division, there used to be this list of churches that I would email to say, hey, we're hiring or whatnot. I would actually like to employ that to try to see if we can collaborate and come together and schedule some meetings, some roundtable meetings to develop strategies specific to the areas in which those churches are. I'm willing and open to working with community groups and grassroots organizations as well, just as I've been doing over the past few years.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Douglas, your resume is impressive. You have a ton of experience, advanced education, and all those good things, right? So I want to ask you a question that's kind of deeply rooted in policing. And that's, what's your stance on the deployment of SWAT teams and the execution of no-knock warrants?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
And this comes from standards and strategies. What's your stance on the deployment of SWAT teams and the execution of no-knock warrants?
So twofold, the deployment of SWAT teams and the execution of no-knock warrants. Considering I did work in violent crimes unit, I often utilized the assistance of the SWAT team when we had those violent offenders who were known to have weapons, pretty much weapons more powerful than the ones we were equipped with back in that time. I do understand that there has been concerns in regard to the no-knock warrants, but based on my experiences and the situations that I have been put in, I also understand the value of having to utilize no-knock warrants because of the safety that it can bring, not only to the law enforcement officers who are there, but also any other surrounding bystanders who may be nearby. So I see the value in it, but I also see the need for utilizing the no-knock warrants sparingly.
Ms. Matthews.
My question comes from personal approach and leadership. What does the first 100 days look like? Rank the top priorities and your process for accomplishing them.
My first 90 days as chief gonna be busy, right? It's gonna be very, very, very busy because the top 5 priorities that I have, based on my experiences and background with procedural justice, it's gonna focus on that. Building trust and legitimacy is pretty much the first pillar in 21st century policing. So that is a priority of building trust and legitimacy by coordinating consistent and intentional community engagement with all citizens through various programs. I also want to build trust and legitimacy through consistent and intentional engagement with and training of our employees to inspire them to serve efficiently, effectively, and professionally. Internal procedural justice is just as important as external procedural justice, and in my opinion, I don't think we do that well. Internal procedural justice. I definitely want to meet with, another priority is meeting with community groups as well as union leadership to see where we can find a common ground on how we can move forward to serve the best interests of this community. I also am open to continuing on as a priority the crime fighting strategies that have proven to reduce crime, but crime is still too high. So in addition to the crime fighting strategies that are in place right now, I actually want to expand and find others by researching comparable agencies who may have some of the same issues that we have here and try to deploy those strategies here in the Baton Rouge community.
Ms. Douglas, describe a situation, this is coming from personal approach and leadership. Describe a situation where you made a decision that was met with negative outcome. How did you handle the feedback from your supervisor?
Good question. Can you repeat that for me one more time,
Sure.
Mr. Cole?
Describe a situation where you made a decision that was met with a negative outcome. How did you handle the feedback from your supervisor?
Oh, very good one. So considering that I worked in the chief's office and then I transferred over to the training academy, we had a lateral academy that was going on. And one of the things that I messed up because I should have known better, but Chief Paul requires anyone that graduates an academy to know the vision, mission, and values of the police department. And we had a graduation scheduled. Family showed up. We were all in the chief's conference room. They were all dressed up, ready to graduate. Chief Paul asked, they know the mission, vision, and values? And I'm like, nope. I didn't take that well because out of everyone that worked in that division, I should have known better. And the graduation was canceled. The family members that came in, it was a bad day for me because I felt like it was my fault and it would never happen again. So what I did was any subsequent training academies, by week 5, you're gonna know it. By week 5, so I have it staged to where something like that would never happen again. I took personal accountability for that because I should have known better. And I got chewed out.
Thank you. Mr. Brignett.
Hello again. So I forgot to say the category last time, so I'll remember this time. It's category 6, leadership, culture, and accountability. So without discussing any details regarding the Brave Cave and related accusations, what steps would you take to ensure that if there's a cultural issue of this type within the police department, how would you ensure that this activity would not occur again? What would you draw from your academy experience, your internal affairs experience, and generally, what types of checks or balances do you think there need to be?
So for sure, training, consistent training, and oversight of some sort is necessary. I do think it takes a while for that type of thinking, for the alleged behavior, that type of thinking to manifest. One of the things that I would implement to ensure that we never get to that point again is to any division that we have, because there's value in the type of work that is done to target crime. However, I think those should be short-term assignments to where we're rotating personnel in and out rather than allowing the same people to sit or work in a division like that for months and years at a time. And when I say short-term, I'm thinking 3-4 month rotation, and then rotate new supervision, new employees. So that is something that I think will help with the checks and balances of that. In addition to some policy changes, there may be some policy changes that we can revisit, as well as some quality assurance checks, to where we may have some, I guess for lack of a better term, some random audits. We may be knowing that this certain division may be working this area, so we may have someone from senior leadership or training, the training staff to actually just kind of pop up and monitor.
Thank you.
Ms. Victorian.
Thank you so much. Ms. Douglas, due to the national high-profile cases and incidents across the country, law enforcement is not well received or seen as trustworthy in many local communities. What would you do to change that?
Thank you. So going back to the Collective Healing Initiative, like I said, I was able to establish some relationships and some partnerships, and still to this day, the department is allowing, but I'm coordinating to where we're putting law enforcement and citizens in the same room. We have the Trauma to Trust initiative that's going on. We have a cohort that starts this Thursday. We also have another cohort that starts early next month, where I see the growth. I see the growth in mutual understanding by just having those courageous conversations. I participate in the Citizens Academy, where I'm there engaging with community and law enforcement in the same room. So very intentional about holding those conversations and just trying to get it to where we can see and understand and be more empathetic toward one another. And I believe those courageous conversations allow us to bridge the divide between the community and helps us build trust, in addition to all the other things that we do as a police department with our community policing efforts.
Mr. McClanahan.
I don't have a question.
Ms. Carwall.
Caught me off guard there. I like hearing you mention 21st century policing. I think that's important, and I would like to hear, what do you think is the most important pillar of 21st century policing for us, for Baton Rouge, and why?
Building trust and legitimacy. I think that is the overall scheme, because if you tackle that one, it kind of takes care of the other pillars that come to follow. So that is the most important, because as a police department, we need the citizens to perceive us as a legitimate authority, to perceive that we are utilizing our powers and executing our duties and responsibilities responsibly and respectfully and professionally. And if community members perceive us as that, they're more likely to work with us to report those crimes before they happen. If they see something, they're going to say something to us, which ultimately is going to work to reduce crime in the Baton Rouge community.
Thank you.
Pastor.
How would you describe your leadership or managerial style? And within describing your leadership and managerial style, state your position on discipline and commendation.
Okay, so I would love to consider, when I consider myself an inclusive leader, to where I feel all stakeholders should have a voice and a seat at the table. All stakeholders should be able to provide their input. I like to lead people and manage tasks. So I like to focus on the people and do what I can as a leader to empower those around me by setting my expectations and my standards and leading by example. As far as managing the tasks, we're going to focus on those things that we are tasked with doing. However, those around me that's working with me, I want to empower you to be able to take on that task based on you seeing how I work and how I function. And I want you to rise to that level. And if you surpass me, then you take me up with you as well. As far as commendations, I believe commendations and any deficiencies, I think they should be addressed immediately. Meaning if someone does a good job, you give that accolade immediately and as quickly as possible. Because not everyone needs that, but everyone loves to hear when they've done a good job. When we talk about misconduct, those two should be handled swiftly and addressed appropriately so that you can provide them with the mentorship training and counseling that's needed so that they can be better and learn from those mistakes. Now, are there some things that, okay, it's kind of like a big deal, right? There's some times that, yeah, you messed up. You messed up really bad. Have a conversation about it, learn from it, and if it needs to go to a higher level, then it should, and it will.
Pastor DeGraffenreidt.
Thank you. Ms. Douglas, this is from Recruitment, Retention, and Personnel Support. How can we recruit and retain more qualified officers? And how would you implement a plan?
Okay, I did 5 years in recruiting. So, and I definitely had a hand in creating our current recruitment strategy that we have going on right now. I do believe that we can be more effective in recruitment with engagement and participation by the chief and executive staff. I think that looks good to see the chief at a recruiting event. I think it looks good to see the chief or the deputy chief at a recruiting function working alongside with their recruiters. That is, I want to go work there because look at the chief. I want to go work there because the chief is out here on the front line. As far as, we've done the incentives, we've received some raises. People are not motivated by the money as much. They'll leave for 25 cents more an hour nowadays. So we need to restore the climate and the culture in the Baton Rouge Police Department to where people want to work here because they want to be here, and it's not about the dollar. As far as retention, I believe personal development and investing in our officers, we got a lot of improvement to do there, and providing them with the resources, the support, and training that they need to become those future leaders in the department. Providing that inspirational motivation for them to want to stay here. When I came to BRPD, I came because I wanted to be a police officer. I did not know I was going to get paid while I was in the academy. I was praying, I don't know how I'm going to pay these bills. And that's what keeps me here, because I want to be here. And that's what we have to do, establish an environment that inspires people to want to stay.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Those ladies to your left, they came with you because Myron and Ballard ain't bring nobody with them. But I'm asking a question, and you know, you have a ton of institutional knowledge, and you talked about some of the things that you've done within group settings to reach the community. But oftentimes, the community members, without trust for police, they're not coming into any rooms, right? So my next question, with keeping that part in mind, is from community engagement. And it says, how do you propose to improve relations with the community, especially the black community, to improve trust and open communications? What has been your experience in this area?
That was a lot.
That was a lot. I'll break it down for you.
Yeah, break it down for me, please.
How do you propose to improve relations with the community, especially the black community, to improve trust and open communication? What has been your experience in this area?
Okay. Thank you for repeating that question. So while I was working in the chief's office, the Chief's Advisory Council was established. So I was in those rooms a lot. Matter of fact, I was coordinating most of those meetings. So I have some experience there with being in those rooms. However, is that enough? Can we do more? I, as a chief, would like to have more frequent meetings because to make sure that we're immediately addressing issues that's going on in the community as it, you know, almost in real time. I think those meetings are quarterly, maybe even bi-monthly, and then there's some special called meetings. I would definitely want to do a little bit more with that. I do also think that we can do a better job of working with the youth, more mentorship, and maybe even having a junior advisory council, because we need a little bit more programming for our youth. And so yes, that is something. So the Chief's Advisory Council, a junior advisory council, and another thing that I actually want to consider from an internal standpoint is, and I don't even know what the name of it would be, but I would want an advisory council from within as well, comprised of people on the front line, advising us of the issues that they're facing, because it's been 10 years since I've been in patrol. So I think I know, but I don't know what it's like to patrol today for them. And we're making decisions are being made that affect those on the front line without any input from them, in my opinion. And that's what I'm hearing when I host my training sessions.
Ms. Matthews.
Turn it off. My question comes from the Officer Wellness and Wellbeing section 10. How will you address the mental health challenges that officers may face and ensure their holistic well-being, particularly after distressing incidents?
So, based on my experience with the Collective Healing Initiative, we have implemented a wellness program, but it's not where it needs to be. And one of the things that I would like to incorporate, and it comes at a cost, is to possibly hire a psychologist to work and be infused and ingrained in our training academy process and within our department, so that we will have that person integrated into the system and into the culture to remove that stigma of mental illness in the department, or having those issues with mental illness and mental wellness and things of that nature. So that is one of the things that I think that we need in the department, based on my experiences with the San Antonio Police Department and how their structure is with their mental wellness piece, to ensure that our officers are getting what they need, especially when those critical incidents happen and those debriefs are done by a licensed professional. We do have a peer support program in place, and I think that it is of great benefit to our officers, but we're not licensed counselors though. And I think we're missing that piece if we really want to make sure that our officers are getting what we need. I think that is something that's gonna complete the program.
Ms. Douglas, which new community policing efforts do you favor most? Why? And which do you disfavor and why?
Which community policing efforts
Which new community policing efforts do you like, and which ones do you not like, and why?
Well, I like all of them because all of them has a specific purpose. But I will say I would like to expound on some of the initiatives that we have to where I could put more accountability on division commanders to do more within their segments of the community. Meaning, so I would like, because right now we have a community policing division. It should be a department-wide mindset, not just rest on the shoulders of a few. I would like to kind of decentralize community policing efforts so much so that each district commander is going to provide some type of strategy or plan, community policing plan to increase the number of non-police enforcement encounters with those within their districts. That is something that I think will expand our depth also and make a greater impact, improve police community relations in such that it ultimately helps increases that legitimacy, that perceived legitimacy that the community members may have. So what that looks like, first district will have a plan, second district will have a plan, and they're going to be responsible for carrying that out and utilizing their personnel within their districts to deploy those strategies or programs.
Thank you very much. Ms. Douglas, you will now have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Got to give you what I gave everybody else. I gave you 2 minutes and 10 seconds because Mr. Ballard and Mr. Daniel went over by 10 seconds.
Well, I planned for 3. I try to follow the rules, but okay. All right. So as a little girl, my perception, my reality was daily chaos, resulting in frequent police visits. It was the police who made the chaos go away and brought peace to my home. I became a police officer because I wanted to provide others with the same sense of safety and security that was provided to me as a child. I never forgot my why, and that it drives me day in and day out to show up and show out. All that I have done and all that I do is done in excellence, in alignment with the mission and vision of the Baton Rouge Police Department. I've spent years preparing myself for this opportunity to lead and positively impact this department and this community. I believe this position is right for me right now. From the vantage point of where I stand in the Baton Rouge Police Department, I am not able to make the biggest impact necessary for us to thrive, but I try and I try. I am a visionary who will continue the work of not only bridging the divide between the police and the community, but also bridging the divide between the front line and executive staff. All stakeholders matter and all should have a voice. And for 19 years, I've been consistent in performing well, consistent with fairness, consistent with righteous decision-making, consistent with improving the Baton Rouge Police Department, and I've been consistent with service. I am bought in and actively engaged in deploying the 21st century policing principles and will continue to build on the foundation and will take it to higher heights. This community needs a leader who is committed to the work, committed to the people, committed to serving, and committed to the mission because we cannot afford anything less than that. It is not about the title or the power for me. It's about the people feeling safe inside the department and feeling safe outside of the department. Here I am. Send me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 more candidates for the evening. Next, we will hear from Kay Hines. Kay Hines. Good evening, Mr. Hines. I'm Lamont Cole, chairman of the Chief of Police Interview Committee. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the process is going to work. You'll have 3 minutes to make an opening statement, and then each one of the committee members will ask 2 questions from a list of 12 categories. We can ask up to 2 questions should we choose. We may not ask 2, but we can ask 2. You'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and then you'll have a 2 minutes to make a closing remark.
Yes, sir.
All right. You ready? And let us know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. You got 3 minutes to make an opening statement. On you.
Okay. And first of all, I apologize. I lost my voice over the weekend, of course. So we'll get through this the best we can. But I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come here and be interviewed this evening. I also want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules to conduct these interviews and to be on this board. I know how important it is to the city and to our department that the right candidate be chosen. And I know that's something that y'all are taking serious and not taking lightly. I worked with the Baton Rouge Police Department for 30 years now. I was 2 years on as a reserve in 93 to 95. And in 95, I began my career as a full-time law enforcement officer with the city. Throughout my career, I have always prided myself with the integrity that I have, with the honor that I serve the city with, and the fact that I have been fair in everyone that I've dealt with, both on the criminal side and on incidents that don't involve criminal activity where we've had contact with the public. I think that that's the most important thing that an officer can do, is realize that we work for the public and that our integrity is of the utmost importance. That's what I demand out of the officers that I supervise now and that I will supervise as the chief of police.
Great. Mr. Brignac.
My apologies. I'm trying to find the question.
Yes, sir.
So, Ms. Rhines, this is from Category 8, Data, Technology, and Transparency. So, trying to make sure I get it right from your resume. I see that you worked with the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, and seeing that, I wanted to ask you the question here from 8 about, are there any nascent practices or technologies that you believe could help BRPD achieve its mission of protecting and serving the public? But attached to that, I wonder if you have any questions or doubts about some of those practices. For example, we saw in New Orleans issues with cameras, yards, personal privacy. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering your thoughts on that.
So since being assigned to the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, I had the opportunity to be there for the inception of that unit, which was led by our ATF counterparts. There's a lot of technology out there that we currently use, such as ShotSpotter, NIBIN. There's some new technology related to DNA processing of shell casings. We're able to get a lot better results than we have in the past. As far as technology goes, I know that it's a very touchy subject whenever you start looking at cameras, surveillance cameras in areas of incidents where we've maybe had an incident. I think that as long as we stick with abiding by the Fourth Amendment and use the judicial system in order to obtain search warrants for that information, I think that we will be okay.
And I'm permitted to ask a follow-up. Is that right? So with that one, would you implement policies to ensure that the public could be completely assured of that, in the sense of showing a guarantee of that? Like, we're not only going, we're requiring this sort of neutral decision maker's role.
Yeah, but I think more than a policy, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem putting something like that into policy, but I think that we have to abide by the Constitution that we swear to uphold. And I think that if we do that, especially in the situations of Fourth Amendment issues, that that shouldn't be something that we would necessarily have to put into policy, but I would have no problem doing that. But we swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And I think that is a situation, especially anything that requires a search warrant from a judge or a magistrate, is very clear that this is the procedure that we have to follow to abide by the law. But as far as putting it in policy, I would have absolutely no problem with that. I think that would probably fall more in the procedure category.
Mr. Hines, that's your time on that question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry, I do tend to talk a lot.
Thank you.
Ms. Victorian.
My question will be coming from community engagement. How can the chief build healthy communication with community members, not just the community leaders?
I am with you 100%. I am so glad you asked that question. I think it's very important that we listen to the people that are living in the areas that we are protecting. I think it's great that the leaders of those communities can come forward with concerns, but I think it's more important to talk to Miss Lily that lives on the street corner to find out what she wants. And it's really funny you say that, because when I first got into the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, we ran a rapid response team. And what that was, we had 4 detectives. I'm going to go over again. We had 4 detectives that worked 5 hours, 3 nights a week, and they went out to the areas where we were likely to have gun violence. And they were the first ones to respond. Well, before we got anything, we would go to these areas and we would knock on doors and talk to people. The biggest complaint we got was, where are y'all? Why aren't your officers in my neighborhood? I want to see police officers out here. And I agree with you 100% that sometimes the message from the public is not necessarily the same message that reaches our ears, and it's important to listen to them. That's who we work for.
Mr. McClanahan.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon. How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
As we embark on this new season, please share any thoughts you have about the overall direction and outlook for the Baton Rouge Police Department.
So overall, I think that we need to continue the work that has been done to this point for public, not public perception, but public trust. But I think that we also need to start incorporating the trust and faith of our officers and our administration. I think that one is just as important as the other. If you take care of our officers, we will take care of our residents and our public. And I think that is the 2 most important things that we should strive for in order to come together as a community and law enforcement entity. Sometimes we'll have to agree to disagree on matters, but I think it's important that we have those open conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carwell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am with Together Baton Rouge, and one of the things that we believe strongly in is instituting civilian oversight. So I'm interested to know if you were our police chief, would you be open to using civilian oversight, and how might you incorporate that in your administration?
So as I stated before, if we haven't learned anything in the past 7 years since 2016, the public runs and has a huge say in how we police. I think that's been very clear over the past several years. And if we don't listen to them, we don't open those lines of communication and really listen to them, I think that we're missing a huge point. When we talk about oversight, I would be very interested to see what you mean by that. I think that constant communication between myself as the chief and members of the public is extremely important. Tell me what you think we're doing right. Tell me what you think we're doing wrong. I think having civilians have input on the policies and procedures that we implement and follow, and corrections to the ones that we currently have, is a great idea. The public has to agree with the way we do things. So I would be very interested to find out exactly what your foresight is in an endeavor like that, but I'm open to discussion. We got to figure something out. Violent crime is bad in Baton Rouge, and we need to fix it.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The position of chief is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization which oversees hundreds of staff and millions of tax dollars and manages thousands of physical resources. What in your background makes you qualified to serve at this level? Please provide specific details.
So specifically, I've been in charge of putting together budgets for the various divisions that I've been a supervisor for. Now, I know that's not on the scale of an entire police department, but one thing my dad taught me growing up was how to handle money. And from the time I was little, if we did a chore, it went in the book, and we learned to manage money. I've grown up with a healthy respect for money management. Will there be things that I need to learn? Absolutely. Do I know everything about running a multi-million-dollar business? I do not, but I promise you I'll learn.
Thank you.
Pastor DeGravel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This comes from the personal approach and leadership category. Baton Rouge is a multicultural community with a thriving refugee and immigrants population. Please detail what, if any, experience you have in effectively providing public safety programs in place, partnering with these kinds of communities.
So when I worked in the armed robbery division specifically, we obviously have a growing population of Hispanic persons and a lot that don't speak English. One of the things that I will definitely do actively is start looking to recruit from that community. We have several officers who are very fluent in Spanish. Arthur Munoz, who worked here, who I came through the academy with, was a liaison between the police department and the Hispanic community. He went on their radio station on a regular basis. We're seeing that community victimized, and they're afraid to come forward and talk to us. There were many times where we went through the Hispanic officers that we have on our department in order to liaison between us and the community to try to get those folks to come forward. Hey, you're a victim. You're a victim. We're not asking you status. We're not worried about that. We're worried about what's going on in your community. So I think that recruitment in that community should be a top priority. I also happened to talk to Arthur this weekend. I said, look, if they make me chief, you're coming back as my liaison to the Hispanic community. And he said, oh, well, he didn't give me a positive answer, but he is one of our reserve officers now, so he'll have to.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I don't think Arthur coming back.
I bet he will.
Mr. Hines, I'm going to ask you a question from the personal approach and leadership section, and this is a question that was actually submitted by another candidate. As we embark on this new season, please share any thoughts you have about the overall direction and outlook for the Baton Rouge Police Department.
Yes, sir. Well, I think it'd be very similar to Mr. McClanahan's question that I answered. It's very important. Let me see if I can, since I used all my time on that last one, let me see if I can change it up a little bit. Look, to me, it's very important that we listen to the public, that we have those communications, that we understand what they expect. At the same time, I need to do the same thing for my department. I need to talk to the officers. I need to see what their concerns are because, like I said, the biggest complaint that we had from the public is, where are your officers? Why are you not out here patrolling my streets? We don't see anybody anymore. That was the number one complaint that I got talking one-on-one with our residents. If I can build the trust and the respect of my department, they will go out and take care of the public. Now, we can't just cut them loose and say, hey, go out there and proactively patrol, because that's a bad word these days, right? That kind of has some connotations that are tough. But we need to train our officers to do it the right way. Our biggest problem as officers, a lot of times, is the way we speak to people. And a lot of times, that is just personality differences. But you have to be able to turn that on and off. I have prided myself in the way that I talk to people, the way that I handle individuals that I've either had to arrest or that I'm just taking a report from. But I think that that's very important. I want to see our officers respect the public, and I want to see them. I don't want the public just to trust me. I want them to trust every single member of the Baton Rouge Police Department, and that would be my goal.
Good evening. My question comes from standards and strategies. Looking to the future of BRPD, what do you believe is the department's greatest difficulty that it will encounter? What area do you believe shows promise or has the greatest potential?
So I think with the developments over the years of technology, I think that the biggest advantage and the biggest challenge that we're going to have is how to properly use that technology, like Mr. Brignac asked earlier and discussed earlier. There's a lot of, the use of drones. A lot of people are concerned about the use of drones, the use of ShotSpotter, which I was very active in when I was in the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. The use of ShotSpotter came into question across the country. People were believing that this was a technology that maybe brought officers to a scene when they weren't needed in the first place, and bad things happened. I think that we need to look at the technology that's out there, that we need to find out how we can use it to best protect the city, and then how we can do that legally, under the legal guidelines, making sure that we're not violating any constitutional issues. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hines, describe a situation where you made a decision that led to a negative outcome, and how did you handle this feedback from your supervisor?
Okay. Let me get another drink on this one. When I was a young officer, we got involved in a pursuit with a burglary suspect. The burglary suspect actually came from Baker. Well, being a young officer, it was exciting. I'm in the middle of a car chase. We're on the interstate, chasing a Ryder pickup truck. I mean, a roll-up truck. And I switched over to another dispatch channel. My lieutenant told us to call off the chase. Well, I was on a different channel. I switched over to the channel that initiated the pursuit. We went all the way to Lafayette. All right. During the chase, another jurisdiction fired shots at the vehicle and actually struck one of the occupants. So now we're in a big mess, which my lieutenant had the foresight to pull us out of before it happened, but I was on a different frequency. I didn't hear it. So when I got back to the office, which it was funny because the news even talked about how we had to phone in because our radios didn't go that far, which was true. Sorry, this was 1996. When I got back to the precinct, and my lieutenant and I had a great relationship, and he was mad. And he didn't want to hear that I switched channels. He didn't want to hear any excuses. And by the end of it, we talked it out, and I understood what he was conveying to me because he was mad. And he understood that I wasn't going to do that again. That's all he needed to understand. But that was probably the one that stands out in my head the most.
Thank you. Mr. Brignac.
So, Mr. Hines, you've talked a good bit about all your experience, and you have a lot on your resume, including some of the divisions that we have recently seen difficulties with. But in light of your experience with, say, narcotics, but also being in leadership in these past few years, how have you or your division responded to those difficulties and scandals? Brave Cave recently, narcotics division, K-9 units. Did y'all adopt, suggest, or implement any new policies? And if so, what was their result?
Well, some of the things that we did discuss is for having backups for our backups whenever we do interviews. That I don't ever want. So right now, I'm the violent crime unit commander. So I'm over homicide, major assaults, special victims unit, armed robbery, and our crime gun intelligence center. I am a big proponent of making sure your video's on and making sure never to mute that mic. If you want to talk to your friend about what you're doing this weekend, save it for just a minute and make sure that every single bit of that contact is on video and audio. I've also had the opportunity to work with the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office in following up and previewing cases from our uniform patrol units that are going to go before their courts. And the biggest pet peeve that I have and that they have as well is when that camera gets muted. So in my opinion, with the technology we have today, there's no reason to ever not have something on audio and video.
And for a brief follow-up to that, what is your view on how officers should be disciplined for that, determining maybe bad faith versus an innocuous decision?
So no good police officer likes a bad police officer. Every time something hits the news from around the country, it breaks my heart and it hurts because it's embarrassing. To put this uniform on and to have that stigma floating around and people looking at you wondering if that's you, that's a very difficult position to be in. If you commit a criminal act, you should be arrested and go to jail. If you commit a violation of policy and we can learn from it, we have the opportunity to learn from it and make you a better officer, that needs to happen. If a complaint comes in and it is determined that you did no wrong, you should not be disciplined. And I think it's just as simple as that.
Ms. Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Hines, what would be your legacy when you retire?
Fairness, honesty, openness, and hopefully a way lower crime rate.
Mr. McClanahan.
What are the three primary, this comes from the role of the police, what are the three primary or the three most important roles of a chief of police, particularly in a jurisdiction like Baton Rouge?
So I think the most important roles are, one, clarity. Making sure that we're putting the proper information out, not putting information out that's going to jeopardize cases, but making sure the public stays informed on cases that are cause for concern. One of the big ways that I would like to do something like that along those lines is through our PIO officers. We have some great officers, as y'all well know, in our PIO division, and there's no reason that they can't get on social media and put more stuff out. I would really like to see that. I would like to see them having their own channel where they give daily updates on information on cases that require public awareness. What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry. You wanted three, right?
Three primary roles, and you said one is clarity, but
yes.